Okay, brilliant. So we do not have quorum, but we're going to do reports for information for those in attendance. So I suppose we should do a land acknowledgement that, of course, the work of this association and this university takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. And the university is also situated on the Haldeman Tract, land promised to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Of course, it's also Indigenous Peoples History Month in the territory known as Canada. And I think it's important for us to reflect on how the formation of the Canadian state has basically occurred on the back of land theft and the dispossession of First Peoples from their traditional ways of existence, and to like that we do need to acknowledge this before we can meaningfully reconcile with that fact. And of course, many of you may be following in media that there's sort of a growing denialist movement about the harms of the residential school system and what that's done to First Peoples in this country. And so it's important to reckon with this. And of course, as we are gathered quasi-electronically, we can recognize that colonialism is a global phenomenon that affects the whole world by its nature. And to think about how think about our relationships to the lands we find ourselves on. So we won't approve the agenda because we can't make any decisions. We won't approve minutes, and we'll go to executive reports. So council will know that we held a special general meeting on the 25th of May, which successfully was called to order, but adjourned, pardon me, adjourned prior to any decision being taken, which means that we're sort of in this limbo state with respect to the governance review. The board met the Sunday following to decide a path forward, and it was decided that we would call another special general meeting for the 22nd of this month, and notice has been given for that meeting, and the agenda has since been approved. I believe it should be online at this point. So of course, it's important that we get this done. Pardon me. Yeah, I mean, not ideal, but we can get through it. And if we fail to confirm the bylaws at this upcoming special general meeting, either for failure to reach quorum, failure to take a decision like we had last time, or an outright vote in opposition, then we'll continue with an election on the dates proposed herein to the old model. And then the new board will have to figure out a path forward. So I think that's about it from me. Happy to take questions. Vincent?
So for the next special general meeting, what measures will we have in place to ensure that procedure is properly followed and the meeting, for lack of a better word, works properly? Can we put time limits on each motion or something like that, so that we can more guarantee that everything will get voted on, or just have, I don't know, very late adjournment time, that's far more than we would reasonably need just to be sure that we're not going to go past it.
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. It's a good question. So the board has set the adjournment time explicitly after all of the items have been duly considered. Which of course, you know, if we lose quorum or something like that, then the meeting will adjourn. Of course, we're still following Robert's rules, but there won't be any sort of like timing out the meeting issue. I will be in the chair for this meeting, and I guess I mean, of course, we had an alternate chair during the meeting when it was adjourned, and I think that some of the points of order could have been dismissed for being spurious or sort of like deleterious to the conduct of the meeting. But in any case, we have to follow Robert's rules, and that was done at the last meeting. But I suspect that the members who will attend will be largely composed of the same group and hopefully understand kind of the gravity of getting the bylaws approved. And sort of prevent this from happening again. I see Evan has a direct response.
Can we like reduce speaking time so that the people don't have 10 minutes? That feels overkill. Like 2 to 4 minutes seems like enough. All of the issues will have been discussed already.
So I believe, so the board, I think, would have to make a decision to affect that. And I'm not sure that the board is going to meet between now and then. Of course, members of council, if they're concerned about sort of the amount of time being taken to consider the item, can always call the question to proceed to a vote if they think that there has been sufficient discussion. The issue is that when it gets to the assembly, like, it's difficult to constrain the assembly itself the way that Robert's rules are set up. But I will agree that like I had concerns about the way that the last meeting was run. Of course, it wasn't an ideal outcome, and I'm hopeful that we, you know, that it won't go sideways again. Famous last words, perhaps. Vincent.
So, if you're planning to speaker, how would you handle like, I guess, various points of order or points of information that aren't really valid? And for people who are repeatedly violating the rules, how will you handle that?
So, I mean, I think you can reasonably dismiss a point of order or a point of information if it's not being used to. So like we could request that when you put a point of information into the chat that you describe the point that the information that you're seeking, and it can be responded to after somebody has spoken to prevent interruptions. If there are sort of repeated points of order on the same issue, they can be ignored. Of course, like there's always the door opens for like overruling the chair, and that's kind of what I was getting at with responding to Evan's comment that like the assembly takes on its own nature, which is kind of the issue. Like it's almost an inherently chaotic thing. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I suppose. Jay is next.
Yeah, just a quick question. Like for the new bylaw, I know that we don't have the something about the compensation. Is there anything else we need to add to the bylaw at the moment?
So the bylaws at this point, I don't believe there's any intent to amend them. Like they've been approved already, and they're just waiting for confirmation. So there won't be any changes specifically to them unless there are amendments like after they're approved, of course. As far as like compensation of directors, this board of directors is intending to deal with a compensation policy to outline how how that will work for members in the new governance system, including the executives.
You mean current board or?
This board, before the transition happens.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes.
Yeah, and that would be a policy, so it wouldn't actually be in the bylaws. It would be sort of a subsidiary document to them.
Okay, like other than the compensation policy, is there any other policies that we need to add or we need to have?
Yeah, sure.
Jay, did you say composition or compensation?
Compensation.
Thank you.
Jay, one of the things that, so sort of the whole next step once the bylaws have been approved is to deal with the policy manual. So there's kind of, I believe that there was intent to have EAC look at some of the advocacy specific policies. We're working with the governance consultants on sort of the next phase of the contract to help us, like, there's probably going to be like a restructuring of how, like, right now we have policies of the corporation, they're called. Then we have board procedures and council procedures. In the new model, I think the idea is that there would be sort of policy stances, which would be largely advocacy focused, and then operating procedures, which would be sort of like the domain of the staff, how work is actually done. And then sort of like governance procedures, which would be like for example, like we have a procedure of council, which determines when members can be removed, or how much notice ought to be given to, like, you know, like the council procedures, like sort of how council governs its own business. Of course, that's like a substantial amount of work that will probably take the next governing year. Like that would be the work of the first board, essentially. So there's no intent to have that finished before the new board starts. That's kind of like a project for them. And we're working with the consultants to sort of prepare some training and other things to help set the board up for success when they start.
Understood, thanks.
Thanks, Jay. Vincent?
Kind of on the topic of compensation, would compensation for like the upcoming governing year for board members be the same as in a normal governing year, given that the upcoming governing year is shorter? So I can see arguments like for either way, like it's less work, but also there's probably more work to do in this upcoming governing year.
Yeah, I think that, so board will have to deal with that, but I believe we were going to do it on like a termly compensation. So if you're only here for 2 academic terms, then it would be like 2/3 of a full year. That seems most reasonable to me. Okay, seeing no further questions. Next is staff.
I can't hear you online.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi. So attached to my agenda is my report, but just try to. Hello? Okay. Hi there. So attached to my agenda, you'll find my report. I believe I was pretty thorough there, but just to provide council with a quick overview, a large portion of my time for the remainder of this month will be dedicated to doing consultations for the university's digital learning strategy. So that's an ongoing project that the university is working on in line with the university's strategic plan. So the timeline is set to have a proposal on what that looks like ready by the end of this term for senior leadership of the university. So as the undergraduate representative for that, we've organized a set of different consultations, including visiting faculty societies. I visited MAPSOC. Was it last night? No, 2 nights ago. and heard really great feedback there. I believe I'll be visiting ESS on Monday and NSTOC sort of later on. If I did not mention your society, it's because they have not reached out to me. So if you would like sort of specific faculty consultation, please get your society to reach out to me, or if they are currently non-existent, any support from counselors to organize students, student leaders particularly would be great. We'll still be doing consultations with at-large students, so hopefully we'll capture the perspectives of your faculty there, but it's just really helpful to have sort of a group of student leaders who have sort of been the major folks dealing with the academic issues related to digital learning. So would be really helpful. Please reach out to me. Other stuff I'm working on, still working on ombuds. That seems to be going well. Student course perception surveys. We did not get as much a high response rate as we would have liked. Obviously, part of that might be because of the pandemic and how unusual last semester was, but it's really important that we get those numbers up if we want student feedback to be included in decisions around tenureship and professor advancement, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll be meeting with the undergraduate senators just to debrief them on how that project is going sometime next week. Another important thing to highlight is Policy 70. I'm on the working group for the folks rewriting that. So Policy 70 is, of course, the petitions and grievances policy. So one thing that we're having a little bit of an issue with the university is sort of the recommendation that students should be involved in the petition committees. Currently, engineering is the only one that has this at the first initial level when you submit a petition. The university is concerned that students might not appreciate other students being able to review their petitions. However, the GSA rep and I have argued that there are ways to block out the identifying information, and it's important to have sort of student voice and a student perspective on those committees. So that's still something we're working on. I brought this item to EAC just to double check and ask for reaffirmation that asking for student involvement on these committees is something that is in line with what WUSA believes, and that was reaffirmed there. So I will continue moving forward in that and provide an update when I have a chance. Last sort of item, VP Dong, VP Schwartz, and I attended the Town and Gown Association of Ontario conference a few days ago, where we had the opportunity to talk to key municipal stakeholders from Waterloo, but also other regions, and also to gain some insight from the city perspective around some of the housing and unsanctioned gathering issue, including what tools the municipality actually has available to deal with some of our issues. So I believe VP Dong and Schwartz can talk to that as it impacts their portfolios. I'll say we also had the opportunity to talk to our counterparts at USC, which is the equivalent at Western University that has a lot of similarities and a lot of non-similarities as us. So really informative experience. There's a couple of things we're going to follow up with city officials on, just given that there's a municipal election coming shortly and an ongoing sort of student housing crisis. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now.
Thanks, Steph. Seeing no questions, we shall proceed to the report of the Vice President, Operations and Finance.
Thank you very much, Ben. So I don't have a huge amount to report today, but there are a couple of things I'll touch on. Number one, I suppose, is the Town and Gown conference was quite an interesting conference, and as Steph said, a lot of interesting people from Waterloo and elsewhere talking about sort of the issues that face student communities. A lot of talk about student housing there, which was quite interesting, and I'll get into why it's interesting in a moment. Because just earlier this week, I received from the research department that sort of high-level landscape scan of places abroad here in Canada where other student associations and unions have sort of stepped into their local housing markets in one way or another. I haven't gotten the chance to fully review it, but it's a pretty short and sweet document, so I'll be sure to circulate that to council very soon. But there was also interesting conversation about student housing and the approaches that cities have taken to supplying it, and different opinions from different people there and planners. So it was quite an interesting conversation, and I think it'll sort of inform somewhat moving forward pretty well. Similarly, it was very interesting talking to the student association, our counterparts over at Western, because there are some interesting aspects of how they run their student association, in particular. Some roles that they have for otherwise at-large students to get involved in their organization in a professional manner, not as executives, that might be interesting to look at going forward once we're in our new model, and once we're sort of looking at how do we get to that next step of student participation. So a lot of interesting things to learn about our peers. Other than that, I don't have a huge amount to report. It's been a pretty busy little while. But yeah, are there any questions or anything? Very happy to answer.
Vincent.
So, I was wondering, what progress has been made in terms of the housing report the council asked for a while back?
As I said in my report, the research team just earlier this week, I believe, got back to me with their landscape scan sort of what other student associations have done in terms of getting involved in some way or another in the housing in their local community. I haven't had the chance to fully read it over yet, but I'd be very happy to circulate that with council once that very soon. It's just a nice little short and sweet document. From here, depending on how it looks, the idea of the landscape scan was that it can inform ideation and consideration of options that we would have down that road. So having not fully read it yet myself, I can't tell you where that leads us or leaves us. But the next step is looking at that internally, and I'll have some conversations with commercial operations, and take a look at, okay, well, looking at what these other student associations have done, and these options that are sort of ready-made before us, are there any that could make sense in our circumstances or are compatible with our local housing environment? And if so, okay, what does it take to explore them, and then see where that goes? It's a bit of a flexible process. You have a follow-up, Vincent?
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate that being shared with council, or maybe even put on the WUSA library webpage so that all members can look at it.
Sounds good.
All right. Seeing no further questions, we go to the Vice President, Student Life.
Hello. I was looking through the list of things that I can report, and there's surprisingly little. I feel like a YouTuber being like, I'm working on things, but I can't tell you about them yet. So the primary things, I guess, are a meeting that myself and one of staff's AVPs had with a staff member over at Counseling Services about international students, about supporting international students. We floated some ideas about focus groups, as well as I don't quite remember off the top of my head, but there were some ideas floated. So if you have anything that comes to mind when it comes to international student experience with respect to counseling services, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, and I'll put that in the little folder of things to bring up next time I chat with them. And then, of course, the Town and Gown Association of Ontario in London. I'm quite pleased. I sat down in the USC offices with a couple of the execs and asked them questions about their clubs and services for like an hour and a half until we had to go. So I feel like I've learned quite a lot about the different ways that things can be organized and how drastically different a comparable system can be at a peer institution or at a peer student association, I guess. So I'll be thinking about that and chatting with staff about that and the differences and where we might want to consider, I guess, the pros and cons and how they fit together with our student body, just to think about where places are that we have been specifically doing something well that suits our student body better, as opposed to places where we might want to consider slightly altering something that we have right now to perhaps flow more smoothly. I think that's the bulk of anything that council will actually find interesting. So that's what I've got for you.
Thanks, Catherine. Any questions? Okey-doke. Seeing none. Board of Directors report. So the board, as I mentioned in my report, met for an emergency meeting following the special general meeting. They've requested that we seek a couple more proposals for the equity audit, which probably will push back the timeline a little bit, but staff are working on it. Yeah, and then the compensation policy and any other sort of stuff that comes up that ought to be considered before the new governing year starts, board shall be apprised. So we can go to representative reports. Maybe a more efficient way to do this than the roll call is to just have people put up hands and I call on you if you want to give a report. Or in chat if you don't have hands function. Okay, so it's seeing, okay, Vincent, I was counting on you.
So not too much. We recently had Stephanie come to our Massaw Council to discuss the learning strategy thing. It's one thing I note is that kind of the successes that Massaw saw last term with some of the advocacy that the VPED's office helped with in terms of like surveys and things like that. I think there might be more interest to do things like that more often to get a better understanding of the issues that students are facing, and any other societies who are here should also consider talking to staff if they're looking to gather information on something for potential advocacy projects.
Thanks, Vincent. So Catherine has something else to add?
Yeah, just one thing. I think SciFac president is here, so just a heads up that I sent an email with respect to the Dean of Science nominating committee, and that the sooner you can get back to me on that, the better. Thank you very much.
Rosa?
Yeah, I'll just give like SciSocs updates and also respond to Catherine. So we are planning to get a new VP academic this week, who I think is also going to want to be part of like the email you sent. So we're approving them this Tuesday at the board of directors meeting. And after that, like I'll send you their information. So yeah, just a few days of waiting.
I guess,
okay?
Is there any doubt that they'll be approved?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay, in that case, it doesn't matter whether or not they're an executive or not, as long as you're okay with that individual being the right one. If you can send me their name, and I'll I'll send them over on Monday. Because if you think it'll be that person, then it doesn't matter what position they're in. It can be any student.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, and just for SciSoc, next week our C&D is opening, which is exciting because it's been closed for 2 years. Yeah, we are also getting the VP Academic, and our budget just got approved for all the clubs, so they're starting to host events soon as well. But yeah, I am also trying to get feedback from students too, actually, on the advocacy side. We're having a newsletter that's getting sent out that I hope works with it, but like, yeah, that's supposed to go out this week as well.
Thanks, Rosa. I'll utter into record Steph's comments that to make sure you talk to your constituents, because it's helpful and literally your job to provide the execs with vibe checks. Jay.
Ben, Mike, and I had a meeting a few weeks ago about with two other students regarding the COVID things. It was productive. Our goal was to set something down during this council meeting, but we don't have quorum today, so I guess they will propose something to the general meeting, to the special general meeting on the 22nd. I think that's it. That's from my side.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, and I'll say even before we knew that this meeting didn't have quorum, which was this morning, they had submitted a member proposal to the special general meeting, largely to the same effect as the last two. What I'll say is, as long as the general meeting doesn't vote on the proposal, it can continue to show up. It's the right of a member to submit a proposal on something that hasn't been considered in the last calendar year. So I think the way to do away with this problem is to address it. Of course, members are free to participate, engage politically however they wish. Yeah, and I think that's what they have done so far. So, yeah, I mean, this issue isn't going away, I don't think. So, Amelia?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a health update. Everything is going along for spring term, and it's been good. But yeah, I will say after the last special general meeting, I did have a couple of health students who were waiting to speak on the COVID proposal approach me, and I told them that we were going to talk about it at this meeting, which is of course before we knew we didn't reach quorum. So I do have vibe checks from health students on that motion specifically, but I'll reach back out to them and tell them to attend the next special general meeting.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amelia. Oh, yes. Catherine's brought a very good point that the advocacy from the societies on returning to a refund model has been successful, and the Board of Governors approved last week that MassDoc and EdgeDoc have sort of compulsory fees at the point of payment, and that WUSA be responsible for there being refunds, which is to say, of course, like to the Board of Governors, like the societies are WUSA. So our view, like, you know, our hope is that it's administered at the society level, but ultimately we're responsible for making sure that people who request to opt out are compensated. And that's how it's worked in the past. I'm pretty sure that WUSA cut the checks for MassDoc, for example. We do not have quorum. Vincent, do you wish to speak?
Yeah. First, just thanks to the execs for their work on allowing the societies to return to the refund model. make things a lot easier to only issue refunds at the end of the term after we confirm that the person didn't use any society services. The main thing for my point. I was wondering for the health counselor, just as we were saying, it is useful for counselors to report what their constituents feel about issues. What vibes did you get from health students on the COVID issues that you talked to them about?
Can I just respond? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, all of the health students that reached out to me after the meeting opposed the motion that was presented at the past special general meeting, and they opposed the motion that was going to be put forth today. They're in favor of keeping restrictions. They see no issue with the vaccine mandates. And sorry, I'm just like looking because I had their prepared remarks for today. Yeah, they just they opposed the motion as presented in some stronger language.
Thanks, Amelia. Any other reports from representatives? Okay. I don't think there's anything for me to report in my capacity as an officer, and I suspect Cannon may feel similarly. Mike, would you like to say anything?
We finally have a set of minutes, which didn't get approved. Anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so we can't conduct business. We don't have quorum. And I think we've waited sufficiently long to say that you can go home now if you want. You can also hang out. Jay, sorry.
I was just thinking if we can start a informal discussion about how to communicate between student governance and student body at large. Basically, the second motion, 5.2.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. We can take it under advisement. I think we've started doing internal to WUSA, sort of a monthly minute, we're calling it. And I think there is probably an opportunity to, like, and the purpose of that document is basically for sharing between staff what projects are going on. But I think that there probably is an opportunity to, like, expand it even. I have the advocacy manager and myself presented last, well, I guess 2 months ago now, end of April, to the Academic Advisors Conference, which is hosted through the SSO, and there was some demand there for like a newsletter or something. So even for like, of course, that's not just to students, but I think there's like, you know, if we did like a general like newsletter update, like for those who are interested could find that out. We definitely, like, I think reach a saturation point pretty quickly with like sending people emails. It's like the people who want to read them will read them, and then, you know, the other 30,000 don't. And I mean, I don't know. I think it's just like it's very difficult to communicate to the membership when it's this large. Most people probably don't care.
I know, like this. I know that like the Health Congress has a Instagram account, basically posting some important events going on here. I mean, we are not like a secret organization, right? Students should know what we are doing here. Like newsletter maybe too formal. We can just maybe do an Instagram post or post on what's called the newspaper called the UW Print. UW Print. I'm Print. Sorry, I don't remember the name of our newspaper. So maybe do something like informal, like just if students are interested, they can take a look. If don't, okay, then just some thoughts from my side.
Amelia?
Yeah, since we're doing this like informally, I wanted to ask what Counselor Lamb like thought of the Instagram, because the language of the motion, I couldn't tell if it was complimentary or negative. I believe the health Instagram is very positive, but I will say we don't get much engagement at all. I think our last post got like maybe 9 likes. So I mean, WUSA already has an Instagram, and I'm not sure the engagement, metrics on each post of that. I would agree that maybe the WUSA Instagram or just some sort of posting maybe every month would be helpful. But I would also say that like it is our job as counselors to reach out to our constituents and let them know what's going on. And the health counselors decided to do it via Instagram. So we can't put all of this on WUSA and our social media team, because they already do so much for the organization and they have so many different projects going on. And as an elective representative body, it is kind of our role to reach out to our constituents, especially in our capacity as faculty representatives at the moment.
Jay, if you wanted to respond, I guess you can go ahead now.
Oh yeah, sure. I think that like WUSA, like the WUSA Instagram has quite a few followers, and posting something once a month shouldn't be taken too many resources. Yeah, like I used to post it like on my own social media, like on my own Instagram account, but I feel like that's my personal account. Like I don't want to post too many things about WUSA. So I guess we can invite WUSA Instagram manager or whoever on that account to post something for us, if that's possible.
Yeah, what I would say is like, so like, in like pie in the sky ideal governance land, the way that this would work is, because this is like essentially an operational question, right? Like what content gets onto the Instagram page? Like, in the future, I think it's like, it could be like, the new board identifies to the senior staff that, the strategic problem is that we aren't engaging with students, and maybe like in particular, like there might be better ways to use social media or something, and then staff kind of start like responding to that by, doing more monthly communications, or like the stuff that I've like suggested that's more operational. Yeah, I think we all agree, Jay, that there's room for improvement as far as our engagement with the membership.
Yeah.
Next is Vincent.
Yeah, I liked Counselor Land's suggestion about publishing kind of updates in imprint, and I think more broadly. Again, I think this partly falls on, I think, counselors, although maybe under the new model or something, might be an opportunity to have like, staff draft things that counselors can then share more broadly through different channels. But I think I think someone in co-op told me this. I think there's some statistic that students will subscribe to at most like 4, so like social media accounts that are university related. So there's probably like a saturation point. Publishing information in things like imprint or faculty publications like Math News and Iron Warrior would just reach more students who maybe maybe it's the same students who are on Instagram but not subscribed, who are not looking at WUSA's accounts, or maybe they're not on Instagram at all, and it's just it's a bit more. I think just having it in different places, even if it's like the same information, like if every month the whatever social media team posts like a little update somewhere, and then counselors can go and submit that to their various faculty publications or things like that. Just having it be in more places, I think, will just lead to more students seeing it, and it being more likely to be seen. So that's another avenue to share things more broadly, go through faculty publications, which I think a lot of students read. I'm not sure how many read imprint.
I read imprint. Any other things that people want to talk about while we're gathered here?
Can I add something?
Sure.
I was just trying to say that like I agree like Vincent's idea like to do the publication thing. The reason I don't think like why support like we do a publication or posting together is that like for each counselor like we can only talk to a very limited number of students. But if WUSA, I mean if we did something like on the WUSA account, more students can take a look at this post and know what are we going to do or what we have done. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. Vincent.
First, a quick response to Jay, then I have a separate thing. So like, just to be clear, what I was suggesting is like counselors can submit stuff to their faculty publications. Like, I don't know about other faculties, but I know for Math News, like when I served as VPA, I published an update on what I had done in every issue. And Math News published that. Math News generally will put more important announcements or like communications from student government in more prominent locations, either towards the end or on like the back, towards the front or on the back page, subject to how things fit together. I can't speak for other faculties, but I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, Iron Warrior and other faculty publications were also happy to publish updates from student leaders. As for the new thing, just wondering for elections, I think a while ago, WUSA approved running I think it was a referendum on the matter of returning Fed Hall to WUSA control. Will that be happening in this upcoming election?
I suspect there won't be. I don't think we'll be able to under the elections and referendum procedure because there needs to be a meeting of council where the question is set and committees are formed and approved for either side of the question. So I don't think that it will be. So it could be fodder for a campaign. I'll let Cannon respond first.
I was just gonna say, I think under the procedures, I could be wrong, but I think ERC can set the questions too. I think they have the power.
Could be. Vincent?
Yeah, my understanding that this is what people before me had told me, because I think this was a while ago, but I think council already agreed that this referendum should happen like a while ago, and it hasn't happened yet because, you know, COVID and things like that. But I think now, if you know what Ken is saying is correct, that ERC can set the question. I'm not sure about the campaign committees, but I think the Maslock election procedure is basically copied from WUSA's, and I think there that the elections committee can also handle that stuff. So I think we should be okay to run the referendum as the previous council decided to.
Yeah, I'm not certain about I think it was my understanding that the question was essentially punted to this council, which never took it up. I'm not sure if the question was ever decided. We could look back through minutes and try to see that precisely. Yeah.
I get the feeling it was in Seneca's time.
No, this was in Abby's term.
It was? Okay.
Yes.
No, it was actually in Seneca's time, but then it was moved. The referendum is supposed to happen in Abby's year. They had time to do some work on it before they did the referendum, but then COVID, so we again pushed it another year.
I can go dig this week.
Okay. You be released from the meeting.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Bye, folks.